Asperger syndrome. What is Asperger syndrome? This syndrome was named after Hans Asperger. In 1944, he studied children who lacked in nonverbal communication, empathy, and were rather clumsy. It's an high-functioning autistic spectrum disorder characterized by difficulties in nonverbal communication and social interaction, as well as restrictive and repetitive behaviors or interests. It is diagnosed in about 1 in every 10,000 children and more commonly affects boys than girls. The exact cause of Asperger syndrome is unknown. It has been suggested that it is a genetic cause, though a true genetic cause has never been found, and brain imaging techniques have shown no differences, but that it tends to run in families. There isn't a cure for it, and most treatments rely simply on improving the person's communication and social skills, and in many cases, especially with children, behavioral therapy. Signs and symptoms: the inability to read body language or understand facial expressions, disliking change in routine and being very comfortable doing the same thing day after day, appearing to lack empathy, being unable to understand changes in voice inflection, examples pitch, tone, and accentuations, often a formal style of speaking for their age, avoids eye contact with others, has unusual facial expressions or weird postures, preoccupation with one or few interests which may be extremely knowledgeable about, talk a lot, generally about a favorite subject, one-sided conversations are often common, poor handwriting and sometimes delayed motor development, though many Aspies have normal developmental milestones, heightened sensitivity and overstimulation to loud noises, lights, tastes, or textures. The spectrum is very different between individuals and there is no same case. Other conditions that often affect those with Asperger's: attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, anxiety disorder, depression, which is most common in adolescence, nonverbal learning disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, social anxiety disorder, maladaptive daydream disorder, and fantasy-prone personality disorder. And just how wide is the Asperger spectrum? Here are 2 examples: Daniel Tammet and John Robertson. Daniel Tammet is an autistic savant with Asperger syndrome. He is a very unusual case because he can communicate. He says that in his head, every positive integer up to 10,000 has its own texture, color, and feel, which is also known as synesthesia. He has memorized and recited 22,514 digits of pi, which is currently the world record. He has learned 10 languages, one of which is Icelandic, and he taught it to himself in 1 week. He also suffers from OCD. One compulsion is that he can only have 45 grams of porridge for breakfast. He cannot leave the house without counting the number of clothing items he is wearing. And he is also creating his own language because he feels it is the only way he can truly express himself. John Robertson, he is far more, quote, normal than Daniel Tammet. He has a son that he calls Cubby. He did not discover that he had Asperger syndrome until much later in life, in his 40s. He dropped out of high school in the 10th grade, and his Asperger's gave him a rare insight into electronics, which later, because of his interest, he designed special effects guitars for Kiss in the 1970s. He is now a speaker and advocate to educate about Asperger's syndrome, and there is a link to his Facebook page. And here are all the sources.